Welcome to the Group Dentistry Now show, the voice of the DSO industry. Join us as we talk with industry leaders about their challenges, successes, and the future of group dentistry. With over 200 episodes and listeners in over 100 countries, we're proud to be ranked the #1 DSO podcast. For the latest DSO news, analysis, and events, and to subscribe to our DSO weekly e-newsletter, visit groupdentistrynow.com. We hope you enjoyed today's show.
Welcome, everyone, to the Group Dentistry Now show. I am Bill Newman, and as always, we appreciate you watching us today. We are continuing our series of podcasts sponsored by Ivoclar. They always have great topics of discussion and bring us great guests, and this podcast will be no different. So I'm excited to dig into this. It's a topic that is always a focus and a challenge in the industry, and discuss clinical hygiene. And we have three thought leaders in the clinical hygiene space with us today. So I'm excited to talk about this. And first off, thank you to Ivoclar. Like I mentioned before, I'm going to introduce Marissa Buess. She is the National Prevention and Care Sales Specialist at Ivoclar. Marissa, thanks for sponsoring this podcast and really focusing in on this discussion on clinical hygiene today.
Thanks for having us, Bill.
And the other two guests that we have with us, we have Andrea Edelen. She is the Director of Hygiene and Clinical Support at Mortenson Dental Partners. I've known Andrea for quite a while. I used to attend the Scaling Up Symposium that Mortenson used to put on way back when, and really missed that meeting. And Mortenson's just done a great job educating the industry. So it's great to have you, Andrea. It's good to see you again.
Thanks, you too.
And we have Jerin Murray. She is the Director of Hygiene at Interdent. Hi, Jerin. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So, Jerin, why don't we start with you a little bit about your background and then discuss, tell us a little bit about Interdent, get us up to speed. Interdent's been around for a while, but just a little bit about what's going on at the organization today.
Happy to. So Interdent has about 160 offices in 8 states, primarily on the West Coast. We are, we've gone through some organizational change, very exciting. In the past couple of years, we've got, new COO leadership, we have new CFO leadership, and we just got a new VP of clinical operations. So very exciting time to be at Interdent. I have been with the organization for 6 years, and I have been a hygienist for, I don't know how this happened, but about 22 years. So, my journey has been quite interesting. I started in private practice for about 15 years. I moved across the country and was fortunate enough to always find a really great place to work. And then I entered the DSO space with Aspen Dental back in 2016. Enjoyed the organization. Was a territory manager of hygiene support for Tennessee. And then my husband and my family, we moved to Las Vegas. And at the time, there were no Aspens. And I was lucky enough to work at Interdent Chairside. And I was very happy to walk into this leadership role about 3 years ago. So it's been a fun ride. And, I really enjoy the effect that I'm able to have on patient outcomes at scale in this organization, in this position. So it's been great.
Thank you. Andrea, a little bit about your background and tell us what's going on at Mortenson. Mortenson's been around for quite a while, and love to kind of get up to speed on what's going on at the organization.
Yeah, so we started in 1979. So we have been around for a while. We're up to about 150 practices, definitely in growth mode right now. We are having a lot of fun. And currently, I am the Director of Dental Hygiene and Clinical Support, but a little bit about me. I started with the company almost 18 years ago as a full-time practicing hygienist, and loved everything that Mortenson Dental Partners was about. At that time, we were starting to really be interested in growing, and I started looking for opportunities within the organization to whatever was, a growing company, there are a lot of opportunities just to plug in different ways. And so I started mentoring hygienists, working with hygienists, and over time, as the company evolved, my role has evolved.
That's great. Thank you, Andrea. And Marissa, again, so everybody here is an RDH, highly credentialed. We didn't have enough room for all the letters next to your names, but it is nice to have the RDHs here so we can really have a true clinical hygiene discussion. And Jerin kind of mentioned it, especially at scale, some of the challenges there and maybe a little bit of fun, but and certainly, the challenges the day to day. Marissa, a little bit about your background and how you ended up from, being a hygienist to now working at Ivoclar.
Yeah, so I knew from the time I was a sophomore in high school that dental hygiene was the path I wanted to take. I had great mentors along the way. Graduated from the University of Louisville in 2018. So Mortenson was in my backyard. And then I worked in private practice for the office that Jenkins, and worked there for about 4.5 years in clinical hygiene. And my family, we are a military family. So when it came time for our first move, there was a unique opportunity with Ivoclar to be a prevention and care advocate. So I had always had this creative side to me and, really enjoyed lunch and learns or when vendors would come into the school and thought, I'd like to try that someday. And stepping into this side of dentistry, there were all kinds of doors of opportunity and knowledge that as a clinical hygienist, I didn't know existed. So I'm very grateful to Ivoclar for opening up this opportunity for hygienists. And so now what I do is mentor the team of prevention and care advocates. And it's just really fun to see people who are fresh out of clinical hygiene or still working clinical hygiene, getting to kind of dabble in new skill sets and become educators and build connections outside of the walls of their operatory.
Excellent. And I missed the part, what you said you were practicing. What was that first practice that you were at? I think we missed you there.
Yeah, it was Designing Smiles, Dr. Dennis Jenkins. And so I worked there for about 4.5 years and then joined Ivoclar and kind of just took my love for educating patients to now educating my fellow clinicians.
It's some great points. There really are a lot of opportunities beyond clinical hygiene. If you have that RDH and you have that experience, I think it's so important. You can get into sales and support roles. You can, work on the DSO side of things with mentorship and on more of the clinical operations side of things. So there really are, quite a few opportunities for hygienists. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about the inspiration behind these transitions. Andrea, why don't we discuss that? Everybody started Chairside and then they transitioned over. What was the inspiration behind that?
Yeah. Well, so first and foremost, I love clinical dental hygiene. I have to be involved in clinical dental hygiene. And I never made a decision to necessarily leave the chair, if that makes sense. As I mentioned earlier, when I joined Mortenson Dental Partners, I don't know if I mentioned, but I joined as a full-time practicing hygienist. And I loved everything about Mortenson from the start. We had processes in place. We had technology, clinical support that I had never experienced before prior to joining Mortenson. So I absolutely love it. As we started to grow, as I mentioned, opportunities were there to, because while I was newer to Mortenson, I had been practicing dental hygiene for quite a while. So I started mentoring hygienists. I started putting some, different protocols together, SOPs and some things like that. And as a company grows and evolves, as I mentioned, my career did as well. And so while I didn't necessarily decide to leave clinical hygiene, I kept saying yes to the opportunities that were there. And that is how my, role continued to evolve. While, like I said, working in clinical operations, I feel like I'm still involved in clinical dental hygiene care, even though I'm not necessarily in the operatory, but the way that I am supporting clinicians and working toward our initiatives, I'm still involved in clinical care, which I'm very passionate about.
And let me ask you, Andrea, and then Jerin, I'd love to kind of get your feedback too. So what is the day-to-day like for you, Andrea? Like, as you say, you really are still kind of involved with the clinical side of things. What does that look like? Does it look like mentorship? What is you making a lot of decisions from a hygiene product perspective?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I laugh at the day-to-day in dentistry in general, but definitely in operations, you wear a lot of hats, right? And you wear the hat that you need to for that, particular occurrence that's happening. But truly, I am mentoring, whether it is an individual hygienist for, various topics, different areas of, whether it's metrics or verbiage, things like that. I still do mentor a lot of hygienists, but I have a team of clinical support here. So I work with hygiene. They're kind of like the boots on the ground for a lot of things. And then I also we have a dental hygiene clinical subcommittee that I work extremely closely with, as well as a clinical affairs team. Our clinical affairs team is made up of doctors, and they help us drive decisions. And they all bring different perspectives to help us understand anything and everything that we're looking to, whether it's pilot or we've gone past the pilot or trial phase into implementation. We have varying clinician perspectives to help us understand the impact that what we're doing will have on not just our providers, but our patients.
Thanks, Andrea. Jerin, is that typical where you're wearing a lot of different hats and it varies on the day or the challenge? And why did you decide to make the decision to leave, Chairside and become, more of a director, manager, mentor?
So like Andrea, and I'm sure Marissa, you're once a hygienist, always a hygienist. You don't go to hygiene and not love patient care, right? So, but being able to empower other hygienists by mentorship, right? And help them develop, professionally and clinically, help them with their confidence and ability to deliver comprehensive care. It's very fulfilling, right? So that's, what drove me in my previous organization to go into the territory management position. At Interdent here, every DSO looks a little different, right? So when this opportunity came open about 3 years ago, I thought it was a great opportunity to really give hygiene a strong voice inside the organization. The way we're structured is I am the hygiene leadership department. So we do have leaders in our regions who will train new hygienists but they're working chairside primarily. So we, rely heavily on our clinical advisory board, right? The group of doctor leaders that implement policies and protocols based on science, data, and research. That we implement organizationally to ensure that our patients are getting the best care. So the hygiene perspective it's really fun here because I am able to work closely with my local regional directors of operations and really educate them about hygiene and why, for example, while scaling and root planning isn't just a cleaning. And I feel like our whole organization has really come together to elevate the patient experience. And it's been really rewarding.
That's great. And Marissa, how about you? You actually took a different track. Instead of actually staying with a dental group or a dental practice, you went from chairside to actually working for a manufacturer.
Yeah. So for me, it was more so a season of life change. And unfortunately, the burnout did hit me. I will be completely honest about that. But, going back to when I was a senior in college in my DH4 year at U of L, I was getting ready to embark on my career. I was getting ready to get married in the same year, and just sat back and kind of thought about, I had always dreamt of working in this one practice forever with my mentors. And I'm so grateful for that experience. But, it did cross my mind with my husband's career. What does it look like to move around as a hygienist? What does it look like to do hygiene in a government setting or a group dentistry setting? And so for me, I did have a lot of skills that I wanted to pursue outside of clinical hygiene. And so this opportunity was just very unique. It was a season of life where, I had my young child at home. We were moving a lot. And so it just didn't make sense for me to try to commit to a hygiene position. But I still wanted to keep my foot in dentistry, and I was really hungry to learn new skills. And so I was familiar with Ivoclar, but what I've found is most of the time, dentists and assistants are very familiar with Ivoclar, but hygiene has often never heard of us. And there was an entire line of products that we've had for a long time that just didn't get the attention that they deserved. And so Ivoclar said, let's use hygienists to educate their peers. And Ivoclar is very much about education. And so I took that opportunity. I've been allowed to grow within the organization and mentor hygienists now in a different way, and give hygiene a stronger voice and make sure that hygiene is getting solutions just like dentists and assistants are in the practice. So I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the company and the owner family of Ivoclar. This is something that they're really passionate about as well. And they made the statement that if we do really well in prevention and the restorative side of our business begins to decline, that's something they'd actually be very happy about and would consider that a win for humanity. So that is something that I want to continue to pursue with them, and continue to bring other hygienists along and just kind of spun. I had that phase of burnout, but coming onto this side of dentistry, it just makes me appreciate clinical hygiene even more.
Great. So this question is for Andrea and Jerin. From a standpoint of hygiene initiatives, especially for large groups, a lot of decision makers, a lot of people. Can you talk a little bit about the process to really, determine what that initiative is, and then how do you communicate that and then make sure, everybody's sort of following that initiative? It's a lot that can be a real challenge. And I'm curious if you have any newer initiatives that you'd like to share. Andrea, if you want to kick things off.
Sure. That's a really great question, because I think the larger an organization becomes, the more layers there are, right? And so I think anything that you do has to start with alignment and clarity. So for us, I mentioned before, we have dental hygiene clinical committee. We have a clinical affairs team. Prior to, and first, even before that, we listen to feedback. At Mortenson Dental Partners, we are consistently asking for feedback, good or bad, right? And I think we have really conditioned our our clinicians especially, but everyone to share feedback with us. So we have a process in place where anything at all that they're interested in, they can submit that and we review it. That doesn't mean that we move on every single thing, but I think it starts with understanding, what your clinicians are interested in. But prior to taking anything to our executive team, I work with those clinical committees and the clinical affairs team to better understand, as I mentioned, what's the impact on patients, because patient care, first and foremost is extremely important. But next, what does this look like for our clinicians? So we really want to understand that. And so before I go to the executive team to talk about any type of initiative, I really have a pretty good understanding of, what's in it for the patient, what's in it for us, how will this look like, for our clinicians in the day-to-day. That helps, so once you can gain some alignment and clarity there, that helps with the execution, because we know in dentistry, there are a lot of competing priorities. And so if you don't have a good execution plan, there are a lot of great initiatives. There are a lot of great products, a lot of great technology, all kinds of things, right? And so, but if the execution plan isn't clear and fairly streamlined, you'll run into some, roadblocks there. From there, again, we mentioned, regional leaders. Jerin mentioned, director of operations. So whether it's clinical operations or business operations, those leaders are critical. They're in the practices day in, day out. So they have to understand, the goal, the messaging from, top to bottom. And then you have to continue to, when you launch and people are excited about something, that's when you get a lot of, yay, that sounds great. But you have to continue to follow up with consistent communication, reminding people about the why. Because even if you have a streamlined process, any change to workflow can be challenging. So consistently reminding people of the why, backing that up with, data, metrics, support. We currently, we're on the call with, Ivoclar, but Servitech Plus is one of our, not recent, we're in it. So we are working on Servitech Plus as one of our initiatives, it being a great product. But to Marissa's point, Ivoclar historically in dentistry has really been known for their restorative products. And here they have this amazing product for hygienists to have in their toolbox, which lots of patients will benefit from. But it's been important to kind of educate our hygienists on not just the product, but the why behind it. So we've been working through that whole process that I just kind of went through with the clinical affairs team and the dental, hygiene committee, trying the product, giving feedback. What does verbiage look like? What does the workflow look like? So we've been working through that currently.
Great. Jerin, how about you? Tell us a little bit about, this hygiene initiatives and working with different decision makers at your organization. And I'm kind of curious, is it similar to Andrea's experience?
Somewhat similar. First off, we have to have patience, right, in implementing anything new at scale. Once, we have a similar process as Andrea's team. We have a QR code where our clinicians can request a product they saw at a trade show or such, be evaluated. So I partner closely with the Clinical Advisory Board, our CAB, and our operations leaders. Once we have buy-in there, we have our materials testing team test this product on patients. They evaluate patient outcomes and they report all of that information to our CAB, where they circle back around and vote on implementation. Once implementation is approved, we go ahead and start tracking, training, and setting clear expectations for the field. Continuous messaging regarding a new initiative is key. as Andrea said, right, changes to workflow. The teams need to be reminded of the why. And so we have monthly hygiene meetings where we'll have early adopters come on and talk about what they're seeing in their chairs, the results they're getting on their patients. And then, it's a little different when a fellow clinician, down the street is seeing results in their patients rather than leadership saying, this is something new we want you to do. So that, real clinician buy-in and testimonial is key to getting these off the ground.
Thanks, Jerin. Moving on, we hear a lot of talk about partnerships, and I kind of feel like there's certain terms that are used loosely sometimes. There are vendors that are just vendors, and then there are partnerships, and sometimes they're not really partnerships. So I'm going to start with you, Marissa. Like, what does a partnership with a DSO mean to Ivoclar? What are the different pieces that go along with, a true partnership versus, something that may be a little bit more transactional?
Yeah. So, Jerin hit on patience in our chair, but also having patience in a rollout. And Ivoclar is all about education. And so we really like to partner through education, especially working with hygienists. Like I said, we've had these products for a very long time, and hygiene is all about asking the why. And so our education is about the why for clinicians. Why does this product make sense? How does it work? What's the research behind it? How does it benefit my patients? But also for the organization, we want to sit down and come up with customized training and find out their why. And I love working with hygiene leadership because when you ask them their why, as a manufacturer, I think you're always expecting our why is ROI, or our why is faster workflows. And the answer that I get 99% of the time from hygiene leadership is better patient care. And so I truly love diving in with hygiene leadership on what makes sense for your team. What can we do to customize this and to be with you every step of the way throughout a rollout? So we do ultimately have better patient care and we have happy clinicians.
Yeah, that's a great point, to focus on the patients, right? Makes a lot of sense. Normally, it's more the focus a lot of times can be on, from a vendor, and not the partnership side of it is, how do I get the business? And then I'll worry about the implementation, the support, the education, and everything else after the fact. And that doesn't necessarily work all the time. Jerin, what does Interdent look for when it comes to a partnership? What are you looking for?
In our initial conversations, with Marissa and team, we're looking for a clinical purpose, great patient outcomes, and a business win, right? A trifecta of a great initiative. Because I am the hygiene leadership team at Interdent, I rely heavily on partnership with my vendors. The in-office demonstrations, the trainings, the implementation supplies, and then the ongoing monthly, new clinician trainings that, Marissa's team has offered have been crucial in really getting this initiative to take root, so to speak. And, without the partnership from the vendors, it would be a really heavy lift to get the implementation success that we've gotten. The relationship doesn't just stop after the rollout, right? You continue to partner and problem solve and collaborate on new training materials. Ivoclar has been really instrumental in tailoring, their training materials for our team. For example, we have a hygienist in Arizona who is just killing it with the Cervatec Plus. So I went down there. I was like, "Hi, what are you doing? Please, can I record, testimonial? Let's see what you're doing." And I want to share it with Ivoclar. So I shared the video with Marissa's team. They were able to customize our training deck and include that video. So every time we have a new hygienist, they are seeing one of the peers, testimonials about this product. So from day one, our hygienists are getting excited about it. So I really appreciate, just the attention to the training and continuous support.
Yeah, that's a great idea to actually use one of your own people, and that's very successful. It just makes it a lot more relatable. And I'm sure you were wondering, how are they doing it? What are they doing? What are they doing differently? Andrea, any feedback from you on partnerships? Does it differ at all from what Jerin and the team at Interdent look at? I mean, it seems to me like it's with groups in particular, it's less about the product and more about the overall support and education and implementation.
Yeah, I mean, we all know there are a lot of great products out there. And really, a true partnership wants to build with you and not just sell you a product. And my experience with Ivoclar has been very similar to what Jerin said. And I think if a vendor partner does not spend the time getting to know not just the person that they're working with, so myself, Jerin, or other leaders in the organization, but really understanding the organization, what they're about, what their mission and values are, what's their culture like. Is, as we mentioned, I mean, groups are very different, and I think that really sets partners and partnerships apart when a vendor partner or vendor is willing to do that.
So even though it might not necessarily be 100% about the product, it's the other things that make the partnership so important. There's a reason why we're talking about Servitech. There must be something about this product that we're on the podcast to discuss. And Andrea, talk a little bit about why you decided to partner with Ivoclar specifically on the Servitech solution.
Well, and this goes back to the customization that we were talking about earlier. There are a lot of use cases for Servitech Plus, and specifically for us. And I knew about the product, but as we all know, in the past couple of years, we have a certain patient demographic that is asking about alternatives to fluoride. And that was, navigated that how everyone is, right? But truly, it sparked to me that we already have access to a great product that is really great for patients, that is fluoride-free with the Servitech Plus. And so Marissa and I started chatting about it, and I said, hey, I really think that we have an opportunity here, while we already had Servitech on our formulary, to really, kind of hone in on this specific area that we as hygienists and all dental professionals are getting questioned probably daily about fluoride, which I'm still, fluoride's the gold standard. So I don't want to imply that it's not. However, we do have some patients that are looking for alternatives, and that really sparked for me to get with Marissa. And Marissa immediately, jumped on, let's look at this and look at this specific barrier that you're seeing and how we can plug Servitech Plus in. And it's really been, a great alternative in certain areas, but also for all of the other uses.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great point. There's a lot of talk about fluoride, and especially now, and I'm sure you're getting feedback from patients that are asking you questions or are just dead set against it, and so you need an alternative. Jerin, are you seeing that as well in the Interdent practices?
Yes, we are definitely hearing that as well. But we really fell in love with the protection from gingival inflammation, caries risk protection, and then the sensitivity relief that Servitech Plus provides. Our materials testing team tested this product on both our implants and our patients with implants, and also natural dentition. And they were very surprised at the disruption of biofilm that led to much healthier gum tissue that it provided. And also, the sensitivity relief has been huge. The good thing is, I hear weekly from our hygienists, they're seeing the same thing in the field. So it's a non-invasive, easy to use solution that really delivers great results. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
That's great. Marissa, how does Ivoclar really support these initiatives at Interdent and Mortenson? What's the process like?
Yeah, so like Andrea mentioned, you have to sit down and you have to understand the organization. You have to understand what's important and what drives their clinicians to make that change. And so we do have a lot of different ways that we customize education. So, kind of what we did with Jerin and her team was we started a regional rollout, and then it quickly turned into a company-wide rollout through virtual training sessions, along with the support of our field team checking in on the offices. And so I'm on a monthly calendar for Jerin's team, and it's great for those new hires that, they're not going to miss this training because if they're coming from somewhere else, maybe they didn't have Cervitec as an option for treatment in their toolbox. So our rollout with them has looked a little bit different than our rollout with Mortenson. And with Mortenson, we utilized a key opinion leader to talk specifically about fluoride alternatives because that was the big use case for them. And so we have offered lunch and learn trainings to their locations with the help of our field sales team, with myself as a prevention and care advocate. And so the dentistry is not a one size fits all. Patients aren't a one size fits all. What's great about Cervitec, though, is there's a lot of indications for use. So, different groups use it different ways, and we can come behind with that customized training and offer a lot of options. And being the manufacturer, it's nice that we can focus on the education. One of our field sales reps said, I'm not here just to sell the product. We've already sold our product to distribution. We're just here to teach you about this, to stand beside you as you begin to change this workflow.
Thanks, Marissa. As we start to wrap up this conversation, it's been a great conversation. I think something that we haven't focused on here, clinical hygiene, as much as we should. It's so important to the organization and obviously to the patients. What have you learned, Andrea? I'll start with you through this partnership, and maybe something that you might want to share with people listening. We've got a lot of emerging dental groups and some larger groups as well. And then just any final thoughts you have would be great.
Sure. Well, we've mentioned a lot about customization, getting to know each other. And I would say, not just from this partnership, but from several that I've had, I think from the beginning, early on, be upfront on both sides. So from the dental group, the vendor partner, from the beginning with the expectations, because the partner cannot customize whatever you need, whether it's education, key opinion leaders, rollout plans, and those types of things. If you're not upfront from the beginning on what your end objective is. So I think the sooner you can kind of work out those details, the more seamless everything else will follow. And also, so you want to manage expectations because, for example, if Marissa is expecting, we're going to tell our hygienist that every patient gets a Cervitec recommendation, which we wouldn't do that. That's not how we manage that. But I've heard that from other, vendors that I've worked with. And I think upfront, early, this is what our end goal is. And then the partner can have the opportunity to customize and also weigh in. They might have some really great ideas that we hadn't thought of. And so I think the earlier the transparency with those conversations, the better the rest of the process is going to go.
Thank you, Andrea. Jerin, final thoughts and anything you've learned through this partnership?
Yeah, so you truly do have a partner. There's no need to recreate the wheel with training materials. A lot of this can be mostly done for you by a great vendor partner. This partnership isn't a set it and forget it. When questions come up from the field, oftentimes I pick up the phone and call Marissa and we collaborate on additional use cases for this product. So I feel, as Andrea said, it's important to be aligned and upfront with your expectations early on. That really just lean into the materials that are provided for you, customize them as yours, and over communicate with your partners. And they're going to continue to be great partners and tailoring their content to fit your DSO, leading to great success and increased utilization.
Thanks, Jerin. Marissa, if people want to find out more about a partnership with Ivoclar or learn more about Servitech Plus or any of the other products, whether they're hygiene or restorative, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so reaching out to Sean Finn, our Director of Group Dentistry Partnerships, also reaching out to myself if you're in a hygiene leadership position, or even your local field sales manager. We have a Ivoclar rep finder where you can type in your zip code, get their information, and they will get you connected to the most appropriate person to start having those conversations.
Excellent. And it's ivoclar.com. That's a pretty easy one. We'll put that in the show notes so you'll have access to that. Marissa, would you mind shouting out your email address if people want to reach out to you?
Yes, it is marissa.buess@externals.ivoclar.com.
Okay. And we'll put that in the show notes so you don't have to write that down. You can just click on it and it'll take you right there. Jerin, if people want to learn more about Interdent or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, Jerin Murray, Director of Hygiene and Interdent. And if you'd like to learn more about our organization, we are the only Interdent out there. So look us up. We're always hiring, looking for great team members. So reach out to me directly and I can connect you.
Sure. And we'll put your LinkedIn handle in the show notes and the Interdent URL in there. And Andrea, how about you? I know you're on LinkedIn as well, and Mortenson has a website, but it's, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find as well. And just like Interdent, Mortenson Dental Partners, we're always looking for great talent. I practiced here as a hygienist. I think that we do a lot of great things. So I would love to hear from anyone. And underneath our Mortenson Dental Partner umbrella, we do have other brands. So if you are in an area and you think, we don't have a Mortenson, we have several brands underneath the Mortenson Dental Partners umbrella. So we do have a website, as you mentioned, and I can be found easily on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. We really appreciate it. Great conversation. And thank you, everyone, for watching the show today. Until next time, this is Group Dentistry Now.
Thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to stay up to date on the latest DSO news, insights, and events. Also, subscribe to our DSO weekly e-newsletter at groupdentistrynow.com.